Hello, Gregory. Past life reading time. It's an honor. Thank you for trusting me with this task or this opportunity. Um, what was I going to tell you? Oh, yeah. Make sure you put a copy of this video on your computer because I don't keep anybody's readings. And that way you'll have it for keeps, which is very useful over time, in my experience. So what happened was a rare thing where this has happened to me a few times. Doesn't happen often, but I started getting all the info about your past life reading or about your past lives that was coming through today before I was anywhere near where I'd be able to do this video. So I took notes is what I did instead. I wrote it down. And we've got 3 different past lives here that were emphasized, that came through. So what I figured I'd do today on this video is read through the notes and then channel something or pick something up about it to elaborate a little further. I feel like there'll be some of that along the way. So the first life that came through clearly was somewhere in the it's like medieval Europe, and you look sort of like a Viking of, well, it's hard to say. It's medieval Europe is where it is, and you're a hunter, a real life like hunter gatherer, to the point where you literally live in the middle of a very thick forest, and you live by hunting and fishing, but you're also on the move. So it's not clear exactly where you came from, and it's not clear exactly where you're going, because the idea is in that incarnation you're a hunter gatherer. You have a wife and she's pregnant. That was shown. You feel very proud of your family, and this life actually had what was emphasized was a very peaceful, and as human lives go, is very peaceful, is a very fulfilling life. You died or passed on from old age in this life. So time frame feels, again, I don't have a specific, it's just the idea is dark ages, somewhere in moving through the thick forested parts of Europe was where you were shown. You lived in something, it's almost pyramid shaped, and it's made from like leather and skins and furs, and it's sort of a tent. It's something that keeps you warm, and it makes a nice place to sleep and so forth, and it's very movable. So as was the case with hunter-gatherers at different times, you were mobile, so you could follow the game and so forth. But the basic idea again was it was a good life for you. It was a very fulfilling life. It was a very peaceful life. You were tall. You had dark hair, very long legs. What else did I write down here? Your wife's hair was up in a bun. It was sort of blondish, light brown hair. She was cleaning the game in the vision. She was cleaning like what you had got from the hunt, and there was a good feeling of satisfaction just taking in the scene. It was a piece, a moment in that incarnation that I was sitting in your perspective. It would have been in the same time as the Vikings, because the clothing was similar. The appearance was similar. But it was not too cold wherever you were, at least in this vision. And maybe it was just because it was summertime up in some Scandinavian part of Europe. thick beard, from what I could see. You had an animal bearskin hat or cap type thing, keeping your head warm. It looked like it was made from a bearskin. Let me see if there was anything else I missed. I got it from that life. Yeah, it's the feeling of a very, you could say, like a good family life. Your family was a treasure to you in that life, and you actually lived long, happy, peaceful lives as human incarnations go. So that's the feeling that somehow between your higher self and your guides is being connected to you now. Something about your life now has probably already made this connection, and the idea is there's more experience and energy with that you can connect from that life to this one. You can even bring some of the enriching feeling of that life into this one to make it even warmer in that sense to those that are close to you in a family type sphere of relationship, you could say. So then there was this life in Egypt where you were an important person. You were an advisor to the Pharaoh, and the words King Tut came up, okay? But there was some kind of treachery against you from someone who was jealous, and you were poisoned. You died from being poisoned by someone who was jealous because of the influence you had. Now, it wasn't clear for sure whether you were advising the Pharaoh or someone else, but you were an advisor to someone who was making critical decisions, because what was shown in the vision was once you had been poisoned, one of the reasons you were poisoned is like the treachery of the plot. Basically, after you died, someone was put in there that was like a deceiver in your position as advisor, and some kind of conflict in Egypt resulted where a bunch of people were lining up with spears. It wasn't clear if this was a war or if this was a like a inner Egypt military move or something, but the feeling was clear that something negative or that you were the advisor that was the only reason this hadn't occurred, okay? Because the way you advised whoever it was made these decisions in Egypt at that time. It was your influence that was stopping this all these people taking up spears, and then ultimately somebody's blood was spilled over this after you were murdered by being poisoned. So, and this was like the idea of 12 something BC, 1200 BC, or 1200 and some odd year BC, or even 12,000. I'm not sure yet on that. It wasn't all that clear to me. I didn't quite catch that part clear enough. But the idea, it's a pretty amazing thing that, a lot of people's lives were no doubt damaged and lost because yours was. So let me see if I can get something on that, the significance of that, or what one of your guides would like to add to that or say about that. Yeah, it's some of it's so you can understand, some of the idea of what an incredible person you've been in other incarnations, and no doubt are now, whether you knew it or not, and hopefully you do. But also some of it is there's still, of course, uncleared trauma in your subconscious from going through something like this, where for your compassion for the people and your caring and looking out for everyone's best interest, you were targeted and assassinated in a traumatic way, and because of that, a bunch of other people suffered and died as well, is the general feeling here. So really, the idea would be to look at the positive attributes of yourself and understand that that traumatic experience, no doubt, creates a certain feeling in the subconscious that still would be limiting. It would be limiting to your expectations in life. It might cause you to have real fears about, being betrayed or backstabbed when you're doing something really good. And this, of course, could really limit one's openness to some of the gifts they could share more with the world or be who they are. It's really limiting to have things like this still in your subconscious, haunting you in a sense energetically. So, excuse me. Yeah, so clearing away traumatic energies, clearing away traumatic energy from your subconscious. Obviously being poisoned to death at the time was a really a really awful thing to go through. So on top of that, understanding all the treachery involved, how ugly of a scene it was. So really, to give yourself credit, to hold yourself in a high light of unconditional love and realize you're a tremendous, wonderful, divine being. And the idea coming from your higher self here is that this comes up for clearing, so that if you can release the trauma part of it, and then you'll be more open to using or shining bright, or using abilities you have, shining bright, living more your true fulfilling path, being more the light you would choose to be in the world, because you're not carrying around such a tremendous trauma from having done so. Yeah. So when you've done something that's very, very much coming from, you could say, the goodness of your heart or higher aspects of your being, or you've come to bring gifts to a world, and what you get from it is a traumatic, treacherous murder, and there's even a backlash effect that even others lose their life and so forth. And you have to understand that you witnessed that. When your life was over, you witnessed the other consequences of what this plot, this treacherous, you could call it, that's how it feels, that's the word that comes up, treacherous plot. What it really caused a lot of harm to others too, because of some political plot that you were just there being true and sincere and doing what's best for the people, and someone else had more of a sinister political agenda, and you were in their way basically because of how you were keeping the peace in a situation that became very unpeaceful after that. So clearly there's nothing to be forgiving yourself for, but there may still be feelings of possibly even guilt in the human way of perceiving things, when one's taking it upon themselves to protect others and they're taken out and they can't. And it doesn't feel as much like guilt, though. It's just overall trauma and the fear of being treacherously backstabbed, you could say, while doing truly good things and truly good works, and truly coming at a situation from a higher perspective than the people around you in the world. And a trait of older souls is often they've been through things like this. They came bearing gifts. The people around them didn't recognize those gifts, and they did terrible things to you in return. And you carry that trauma and hesitation to use a lot of what you can within yourself to illuminate in this world, because you bring a lot more with you than most. So So truly a wise advisor, truly a natural counselor, of course. It's the spiritual gift of counseling, not man's gift of counseling with papers, although it may be worth it to a person to have some of those certificates so they have more opportunities to do such a thing. And that's a very individual decision. But the truth here from your higher self is that true spiritual counseling is really it's actually a spiritual gift, just like hands-on healing or channeling or remote viewing or mental projection or a whole list of other things. It's a real actual something you've developed in a higher realm in preparation to use in a situation like this, in a world like this. And you're very advanced at it. It's not something that a person in this world can go out and get an education and then they can be a counselor at the level you are. It doesn't work that way. And especially in a world like this, there's no training, no formal training in the world of mankind currently that gives a person the level of ability as a real counselor that you have coming from your higher self, from having developed true counsel by being an old soul and having many experiences, and the way you've been able to synthesize your understanding from all those. As you are, whenever you're channeling more your higher self, the level of wisdom in your counsel potentially is very advanced, to say the least, compared to what's available usually here in the current world of men on Earth. So that's just something you should, if you're not already aware, that's something that someone wants you to know or wants to encourage you about, as tied to this past life trauma. The reason this is coming through is because your higher self decides that, now is the time to inform you that you can let go of that trauma and you can re-uptake this path that you didn't get to fulfill in the sense of that incarnation because it went so badly, you could say. Ultimately, you've become stronger even from that and even wiser as a counselor, but in order to really use all that, the trauma part has to be cleared away. And from your higher self's perspective, you're in a much better situation or opportunity potentially in this incarnation to use those things in a way that will be fulfilling. It will be what your higher self was looking for and was working on in that Egyptian incarnation, but didn't get to complete it. You got very rudely interrupted, to say the least. So this is an opportunity to pick that up now. From your higher self's calculation, this is a good place. It's a safer place. It's a better place. And if you're listening to your higher self, the ins and the outs of what to be cautious about and where to express yourself more and all that, all these informations are available to you. So if you're walking in your intuition and your higher truth, to find an outlet, if you're not already, for the tremendous type of counsel you're able to tap into, it's not mandatory, it's not required, it's just very much encouraged, your own fulfillment. That's why this comes up as a past life. Something amazing you didn't really get to carry on with as much as your higher self and you would find very rewarding and expansive to do. So that's the idea with that one. Thank you. Thank you for all the help. I just got a lot of help seeing all that and wording all that. So your guides are very much present energetically. Not just with me, obviously they're with you all the time. Even when they're over here with me, they're still with you. Their consciousness is able to do non-local things like that. So it's interesting for me when I work with different people. I get to feel different energies from their guides, and I get to feel what shows up. It's very interesting, to say the least. It's amazing. So let's go on to this third one here. It was shown you, okay, this life appeared somewhere that the land sort of looked like Africa during a dry spell. That's how the land appeared. And there was this huge tiger, like much bigger than what exists on the earth now. So whenever this was, it was in a time where there was tigers that looked a lot like a tiger now, except they were just a lot bigger, okay? And there's this man who's got this pendant on his head over his third eye, and it's white with a black line through it, running, let's see, what did I write down? A black horizontal line running through a white pendant over his third eye area. He's a medicine man or a wizard or something, was the feeling or the words or the ideas coming through. And he sort of appeared somewhat similar to a modern day Aboriginal person, except a little bit different, possibly. A little bit different appearance than anybody I've currently seen on the planet, but somewhat similar to an Aboriginal person. And this giant tiger was bonded to him. He had healed it. So he's a healer, among other things, and he could heal animals as well as people. And this is you, by the way. I shouldn't be saying he. You are this mystical figure, okay, whenever this was in history. And wherever it was, I get the feeling very seriously that this was before the shift, possibly even the shift in what what they call Atlantis now, where a bunch of land got shifted and cataclysms occurred and stuff. Because the land, I could really feel it's not quite the same as Africa. It's not quite the same as anything now. It's when different land masses were connected together. Then the geography of the planet Earth was different during this time than it is now. So this one takes place a while back. And even back then, you're this medicine man wizard type figure. So you had tapped into something really deep in that incarnation because you had healed this animal, and it was like bonded to you for life. It was your best friend and guardian. It was always with you. It never left your side. A giant tiger, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 modern day tigers. It was big, really big. Okay. What else came through? As the life progressed on, the feeling came through that you had healed a lot of people and done a lot of things for others, but it was kind of a life where the feeling of being not really understood or appreciated for what you are because you were so far ahead of the people around you that they might have taken it for granted. The way that old saying, like, prophets not recognized in their hometown or something like that. It's almost like you did so much healing and so much good for others that they sort of took for granted. They never did much for you, and they were nowhere near your advancement level. You were incarnating among them from a very much more advanced perspective. And that life just had a feel where it sort of got harder and harder to keep doing all these things for everyone. And it was shown that there was some sort of a shock weather change, and you and no doubt many others, I didn't see others, but you ended up freezing to death. Something happened where, you weren't really all that old. You were feeling kind of run down and not interested in life. So really you could understand that from your higher self's perspective, you were out of there. You were ready to be out of there. But the way that happens, there was something shown where there was some kind of a shock weather shift. Possibly, I don't know, but possibly even like cataclysmically big, because for all I know, this may have been occurring over a massive area. But this was just seen from your personal perspective of you freezing to death. So let me get something on that now. Those were just the scenes, like the remote viewing of it. So let me see if I can channel something. What your guys can give me about what they'd like to explain why this one comes up, this life today comes up to you today as relevant. Because that's the way I ask for it on a past life reading is whatever's relevant to the person now, in the best interest of all involved. Let's give the person we're doing the reading for whatever's whatever their guides and higher self determines most useful to connecting to them right at this moment in time. So let me see something on this third life here that came through, not necessarily in chronological order based on time, but that's okay. It doesn't even, since time's an illusion anyway, that's not necessarily important here. Let me see something. Okay. Try to get myself out of the way, let somebody else use a part of my mind here. One of the reasons this comes up is because there's a parallel, in a sense, between your experience of being very advanced in your awareness of yourself and of reality, you could say, of life, of more of the dimensions and realities of life, than the people you were among. And as much as you were able to do a great deal of good for them, it wasn't as fulfilling of an experience as you might have hoped. This same theme is at least present in your current incarnation, where the frustrations of not being perceived because and it's not that everyone in your life, it's just the masses of the planet you're living on that you're ahead of, to the point where it's sometimes frustrating for you. So there may be parts within you that hesitate to even connect to more of your own awareness because you've been so advanced in that way. In an incarnation shown here, even what you call a long time ago, and had the experience of being such an advanced being, but really not being recognized or noticed because the others weren't, and so they really took it for granted how much healing and the things you did, and your only true companion in a sense in that life was this incredible gigantic tiger who loved you more than anything. He understood. He was the one being in that life that actually appreciated you for the miraculous person that you were being. And that's why he didn't say eat you or something. He loved you. He understood that you healed him, and he understood how special that was. So you did have one true friend, but really among your people, you could say, who the people at the time, you felt very isolated, very alone. And there's parts of that that are true in your experience now at times where because of not having been recognized for who you are so drastically in that experience, there's parts of you that now hesitate to accelerate your own expansion more into a more advanced level of your own awareness of who you are, because I hesitate to use the word trauma, but it's almost like that. It's almost traumatic in a sense how disappointing that felt, and there's a part of you putting the brakes on, protecting you from having that experience now. But again, from your higher self's perspective, it's a different scenario now. The opportunity can play out now to actually be much more rewarding for you potentially because of the time and place and the different factors of the way humanity's set up and what's possible now. So from your higher self's perspective, it's an excitement in this opportunity to be more willing to bring down and ground more of the higher aspects of who you are into this reality. Some of the gifts, you could say, some of the abilities. This pendant over the third eye probably shows that your use of your own third eye was pretty advanced in that life as well. So all the potential uses of the third eye, which really there are so many, connecting forms of information from different times and places and distances and remote viewing, improvements in your health from more use of your own third eye. Because when a person brings a more advanced setup of a certain maybe chakra or something into an incarnation, they really need expression of it. They really need the experience of using it more, or it tends to do more harm than good in a sense, because there's too much energy capacity in a certain place that's not really being used. So finding the right outlets for your advanced counseling, tapping into that part of yourself, the wise counselor that comes from somewhere in the realms of the higher you in your experience, and use of your third eye and all the natural abilities that entails. And what else? You've done healing before, so you can be a healer. That's a gift that already exists, developed within your higher self, you can say. Yeah. Yeah. So the first life shown is about encouraging you to find great peace and serenity in your family, to tap back into that energy, because it's healing and balancing for the other things. The Egyptian life shows that you can now let go of the trauma of being royally stabbed in the back and screwed over for doing something wonderful for your people at a very advanced level of counseling that even whoever it is you were counseling perhaps didn't really understand how advanced and valuable your counsel was to them and to the people, because they immediately fell for the unwise counsel of whoever it was they stuck in your place as soon as they got rid of you. So that again shows being not the challenge of not being appreciated really for what a great thing you're doing. At least some individuals in that life resented you for it. So that's to be cleared away now so that you can be free from the baggage of that, because you're in a different time and place and situation now where there's a lot of opportunities and ways to figure out how to use this, that you don't have to go through that. You don't have to be targeted for something like that. And really, it's your higher self's joy of expression, really, to ground more of the abilities and things you've developed painstakingly through all the different types of incarnations that you've had the courage and foresight to give yourself. So the idea really is the expression of these things. It's a more rewarding, higher timeline of reality in your life, and those are the particular ones being brought up today. The idea of a high level of counsel that's on a whole higher level from a higher plane, something you can tap into there, tapping into type of wisdom and healing abilities and natural third eye abilities, all of which you're just being encouraged to exercise in a way that you enjoy, to approach it from the perspective of your own enjoyment. Because again, there's no requirement. It's simply that the potential fulfillment for you at both the incarnated human person level as well as very much at the higher level of your higher self, where the real treasures of what you're creating are bigger than you imagine from your human incarnation. When you're willing to wield something from your higher self and illuminate that down into a world like this in a human incarnation, the gaining in perspective and growth, and I don't even have words for it, but it's clear enough that what your higher self, the real you, gets out of it is even more than we realize. So again, it's not that there's a pressure, because you're an eternal being and you'll always be giving yourself opportunities for whatever you perceive to be the best potential variety of experiences for growth and expression and recreating yourself in a variety of forms. You'll always be doing that. And this is just one of the many projects, this current human incarnation, but that we're looking at now, the one you're having now. So you're just encouraged that you can tap into those things and realize you're an old soul, and that's part of the reason you've maybe hesitated to use some of these things more so, to tap into it a lot deeper, because of other experiences you've had being ahead of the time, so to speak, for the group you're around. And again, you've done this. You've brought advanced ability, or well, not going to worry about what's the best word, advanced abilities, traits, things you've developed. You've brought them again, even more so. So that's the reality of the situation. That's the reality of your incarnation, is you can be and do a whole lot more from who you really are if you're open to it. And your higher self would find great pleasure in that, knows that you would too. It'd be a very expansive experience, to say the least. There's really no words to do it justice, how tremendous of an experience that actually can be. So that's the idea here. It's to show you a few things that you hold, and why you'd be holding yourself back in certain ways, so you realize you can observe those things and now let them go, because they don't apply to now. That's the idea here. And to realize that you've given yourself the opportunity to express and use certain abilities that you didn't really get to use or be in as much of a fulfilling way as you would have chose in some of these other incarnations. So your higher self saying there's very real opportunities to do that now. That's what it's saying. That's what you're really saying here, my friend. So it's been a great honor to have a sneak peek into the very impressive being that you are, and I know I'm just seeing the tip of the iceberg. But anyway, thank you for the honor of sharing that with you. Again, make a copy of this so you have it. I find that a past life reading will sometimes continue to mean more over time. You know, it becomes even more apparent how meaningful and how useful some of it can be to you as you get perspective, you know. So anyway, before I rattle on and say more, your guides said plenty, and they had the wise stuff to say. I don't even remember most of it, but anyway. Like I say, I don't keep these videos. I'm just kind of the telephone, so it's yours. Much love. If you ever have some feedback or something you want to share, I'm more than open to that. And Just have the best day ever. Much appreciation to you, my friend. Over and out for now.